The past year has been and continues to be an incredibly stressful time for just about everybody. But for a lot of white Americans like me, it's also been a year of recognizing just how much harder that stress is hitting Black and brown Americans. The COVID-19 pandemic put a spotlight on racial disparities in health.
In the U.S., the death rate among Black people is twice as high compared to white people.
Black Americans in particular are dying at double the rate of their population.
Most of the bus drivers in the city of Chicago are Black. Most of the food service workers are Latino. Those populations are struggling hard in all of this.
But the disproportionate effect of this virus is just one part of a long list of racial gaps in health.
Would I be able to get a subway map?
African Americans are at greater risk for developing chronic diseases.
More than 75% of Black Americans have hypertension, compared with less than 50% of whites.
And when we talk about why those gaps exist, we often talk about neighborhood, socioeconomics, and medical treatment. But I'm wondering about the experience of racism itself. How does the stress of living with discrimination impact people's bodies?
Your age captures how long you have lived. But if you're living in a bad environment, your age is also capturing how long you have been exposed to bad environmental conditions and how physiologically deteriorated you have become as a result of that exposure.
These microaggressions, they accumulate over time. It's like a death by 1,000 tiny little cuts.
So I have this map. What I would love to do is map out what life expectancy looks like in New York, depending on your neighborhood. That kind of works.
Okay.
So we're going to use green for anything that is above the New York City average of 81.2, and pink for anything that is below.
Okay. What is Washington Heights?
84.4. East Harlem, 77.9.
77.9.
So Upper East Side, that's where we are right now, 86.4.
Okay.
And this already is like almost a 10-year difference.
Yeah, it's a stark difference.
Thank you.
86.3, Murray Hill.
One thing I think is really interesting with these numbers is, like, if the Upper East Side were its own country, it would be like the second best place to live for longevity in the world.
But then look at this as you're clustered here in East Harlem and Central Harlem is not a good place in terms of life expectancy.
Right. And people in a majority white area are living almost a decade longer than people in a majority non-white area. Huge difference. Can you explain why that is?
Think about the socioeconomic differences between these two communities.
Yeah.
That difference in income would affect access to quality health care, food, transportation. All of those factors play a role in life expectancy.
Yeah. So does socioeconomic status explain the whole picture?
No. I may be stressed for other reasons. You know, I'm African American, maybe I'm having stressors in my workplace, or maybe I'm having stressors finding quality health provider, or maybe I feel like I'm being discriminated against, whereas, you know, someone that is not a minority in the same socioeconomic status may not have those same stressors.
So in the US, your race plays a huge part in how long you can expect to live. If you are Hispanic, you can expect to live to almost 82, almost 79 if you are white, about 75 if you're Black. That is a 3-year age difference between Hispanic people and white people, and a 4-year gap between Black people and white people. Even when you control for education and income, even health behaviors, there's still a gap.
I feel like this all makes sense. It's just never something easy for me to accept.
So those longevity counts don't really explain the full story. So if you look at the percentage of people who report being in very good or excellent health among people who self-identify as white and are also socially assigned white, that number is 58%.
What does it mean to be socially assigned white?
So that just means that people perceive you as white. And for people who self-identify and are socially categorized as Hispanic, that number is 47%. So despite longer life expectancy, fewer Hispanics report being in good health. That difference right there is the health gap. But if we look at people who self-identify as Hispanic, who pass as white, their health outcomes are almost on par with white people. And we see that same effect for Native Americans. Those who pass as white have health outcomes that are almost on par with white people. And that difference is even more drastic for people who are mixed race. So if you are mixed race, but you are perceived as Black, your health outcomes wind up being much worse.
My biggest takeaway from this is just how proximity to whiteness means that you're gonna be better off. So that means that if they go to the hospital or they're consulting with some kind of health professional, they will probably get better treatment. It's fascinating the way whiteness works when it comes to health outcomes.
It's like regardless of your background, the way that you're seen when you walk into a hospital or you're walking down the street.
Yeah.
That's what makes the biggest difference.
Right. This plays out for me personally. I generally try to avoid having to go to the emergency room because I'm just always afraid about, again, how I'm gonna be perceived.
Yeah, I never really thought about how my race personally affected me as I walk into a hospital room, for example. My absence of understanding, my absence of knowledge is the point that shows something about the privilege of ignorance and of unawareness of these things that I've been able to have. But discrimination varies from place to place, and that led me to this. In 2015, a team of researchers led by this professor named David Che looked at the proportion of Google searches across America that used the N-word.
What?
Specifically the N-word ending in ER
Okay.
or ERS, so that gets rid of any music lyrics, things like that.
Absolutely.
It's not a perfect measure of racism, but it kind of provides like a good proxy measure of like the people who are more likely to do that are more likely to have negative racial sentiment. So what they found is for every 1 unit increase of area racism in each media market, that corresponded with a 5.7% increase in Black mortality.
Racism kills.
Right.
Like, this is the first time I'm hearing of racism being quantified in this way. This is like really interesting.
These 3 different studies seem to show that interpersonal racism might be this overlooked factor in negative health outcomes in this country.
When someone says something racist to you, it's a comment that goes to the core of your being. Like, I cannot change the pigment of my skin, and it makes sense that, like, with every single incident that you have to deal with every racist encounter, like, it's taken years off your life. Like, that's crazy.
Not to mention that the perpetrators of those treatments get to forget about it.
Truly forget, yes.
And, you know, the people on the receiving end of that treatment don't get that privilege.
Yeah.
All right. We're about to call David Williams. He's a professor at Harvard who studies the relationship between race, racism, and our health. Let's give him a call. Hi, Dr. Williams. How's it going?
Well, how are you?
Pretty good. How does discrimination influence people's health?
So we have known for a long time that stressful life experiences adversely affect health. And over the last 25 years or so, we have expanded the types of stressful life experiences that we study to include experiences of discrimination. Little indignities that seem to chip away at the well-being of individuals on a day-to-day basis. What we've found is persons who score high on experiences of discrimination, they're more likely to get diabetes, breast cancer, heart disease, and the cumulative impact of the psychosocial stress and the economic stress and the discrimination leads to physiological deterioration, to weathering. They are literally aging more rapidly than the rest of the population in the United States.
And how specifically does the anticipation of a racist encounter impact the health of people of color?
Often, people are taking steps before they even leave home to minimize the occurrence of these experiences. And I'll be honest with you, I feel physiologically my blood pressure goes up anytime I see a police car driving behind me. And I've had good experiences with the police, but I've had bad experiences with the police. And it's that reality, that threat has a physiological cost for me.
And how does discrimination affect people from one generation to the next?
There's studies of survivors of the Holocaust that documents changes in gene expression that puts those persons who had the experience at higher risk of mental health problems such as PTSD. And that epigenetic change is evident also in their offspring. We haven't done that work yet in studies of discrimination, but women who report everyday discrimination while they are pregnant are more likely to give birth to lower birth weight infants. But after the child is born, there are a number of studies that find experiences discrimination by the father or by the mother has negative effects on the development of the child.
I mean, if we wanted to measure the weathering effect over a lifetime, how do we do that?
Looking at allostatic load is one way you can get a handle on that.
What exactly is the allostatic load?
You can think of allostatic load like a measure of all of the wear and tear on the body accumulated over a lifetime. So in a way, allostatic load gives us a proxy measure of aging. Now, to be clear, some degree of stress is good, but it's when stress becomes chronic that we start to see really serious impacts on our health.
And that's what we've got here.
That's what we got here. So we built out this chart with some of the best data that we could find out there about the racial stress gap. Should we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Show me how it's done.
So on this chart, red lines are going to be white respondents, blue is black respondents in this study.
You want me to hold this?
Slap the magnet down, okay, and I'm going to pull this.
Okay. So what's 5 mean?
5 is a very high allostatic load. After 4, that's when we really start to see differences in mortality rates.
Wow, okay.
So it's 1.1 for white respondents versus 1.6 for black respondents. This is the group that we're in.
Yeah. Wow, that one's really strong.
So now the average white respondent has 1.8 compared to the average black respondent at 2.2.
Just exposed to more stressors as a black person. I mean, that's just what the numbers are pointing to. The most anxious I feel is walking home at night, walking into my building. Not to be that guy, but like, as far as I know, I'm the only black person that lives in my building. I've had people ask me, like, when I come home with groceries, if I'm like making a delivery on one of these floors. I hate that part of the day.
That's stress. For what it's worth, these numbers have been adjusted for socioeconomic status. So the difference that we're seeing here is more or less a racial difference.
So what happens around 35 to 44? It's like the age my siblings are.
Really?
Yeah. Now we're at the end here.
Now we're at the end.
These are my folks.
White respondents had an allostatic load of 4. Black respondents had an allostatic load of 4.8.
Jeez.
I mean, this, to me, is the most striking part of this data, is the fact that black respondents were aging a full decade faster than the white respondents.
Yeah, this is crazy. It also makes me want to call my parents and apologize for being such an asshole when I was a kid.
For causing them stress?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they had enough to deal with. I feel like I could have been a slightly better son to them.
Yeah. Throughout this entire series, we've looked at implicit biases and AI and disparities in education and housing. To me, like, the end result of all of those things is this chart. It's the fact that the stress of living in America is so different depending on your race.
Outside of getting this very cryptic look at my future, is there something I can do to not end up here when I'm 60 years old?
I think that's a tough part about this whole episode, right? Like, how do we even start to talk about solutions to health disparities that come from such structural inequalities? I feel like the first step is talking about it. I have been in touch with this group in Philadelphia called Black Men Heal that pairs black men with free therapy. So we could go talk to them.
We should definitely go talk to them.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going? Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Christophe.
Not too much.
Thank you for
Thanks
coming.
for having us.
I'm Tasneem Suleiman. I'm the founder of Black Men Hill, a nonprofit for men of color to be able to receive quality mental health care. I found in the research that Black men are more likely to listen and be impacted by men within the same age category as them and who look like them.
What feel like some of the biggest reasons right now that people are coming in and seeking help?
Because of COVID, people are quarantined by themselves. It's a lot of job loss. It's a lot of grief, people that have died from COVID, along with the racial uprisings around George Floyd's death. So those issues have increased a lot more.
Our young men of color are at war every day. This year, that war has been put on the front page over and over again. It's in heightened anxiety.
So many guys were applying, so we had to think of something virtually to do. So we started hosting a segment based on the different things that were going on in our country. You know, police brutality, grief. Even for me,
It's good, bro.
Like, I lost a dear friend on Friday, and that Sunday we talked about the pain of losing somebody and what it means. And the fulfillment and the value and the respect that I got was other people in the room was having the same thoughts or the same pain, and they found out they weren't alone. You know, and I was talking to Taj before, it's like, do men really know how to cry? Because we've been told so many different times that, yo, just suck it up, don't show no tears. For me, there's a sense of release.
How are you all going about arming these men with the language to articulate what they're going through in a world that takes advantage of you, especially when you're a Black male and you present that vulnerability?
One man being willing to step into a space of vulnerability, it's like putting your hand out and inviting another man to come in. I think vulnerability is like the new sexy. Like, I think that's a very powerful bond.
Thank you, Taz, for saying vulnerability is sexy.
Yes, it's the new sexy. It's the new sexy.
I feel good about it. I'm bringing sexy back. But that transparency, it is such a tough thing, you know, growing up having to put on a certain facade, a certain image.
And I think about Black Men Heal, even the pairing up with a therapist of color, somebody that you can actually identify with. Because if you go see somebody, let's say, that's not Black, I know for me, I'm already stereotyping what you think of me. So there's a fear right there. And to see a therapist of color gives you the freedom to open up.
I actually have a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever taken into consideration race of the therapist? I've been like, I don't feel comfortable talking to you because you're not.
No, I mean, I think that's something that I have the privilege of not thinking about a lot of the time. When I do go to the doctor or, you know, other health services, those are not crossing my mind.
You know, a lot of time we talk about the systematic racism and, you know, the Black community is like, you know, why don't you understand? What we have to realize, there's a reason why somebody might not understand, because they don't see through that same lens.
You mentioned that there are people as young as 18 and as old as 85 coming to Black Men Heal. When you compare people from generations so far apart, what similarities and differences do you see in the things that they're struggling with?
Tons of similarities.
More similarities.
Yeah, and that's the hope and the inspiration right there, because you may hear an older gentleman talk about a scenario or situation that he's going through, but you're in it right now. And so that lets you know, hey, if he got through it, I'm gonna get through it as well. Black Men Hill saved my life, and it saved me from my own self. It's the tools that I've learned through Black Men Hill that kept me stable, that kept me grounded.
When I first started reporting this story, I felt shocked to see that interpersonal racism and the consequences of being on the receiving end of it could be measured in this way. And I felt curious to understand it better. But there's one thing that Dr. Williams told me that I can't stop thinking about.
For many white persons in the United States, it is a surprise. But for many persons of color, it's not a surprise. But for some, it is a powerful affirmation that the experiences we have had are real and they actually can be studied.
Whether you feel surprised or validated by this research is going to depend on what you've experienced in your own lifetime.
I can quote like verbatim racist incidents that took place about like 10 years ago. And so hearing that there's research around this just makes me feel, I feel relieved, because it's like, great, we're talking about this, these numbers are out there.
Racism created the racial health gap, but anti-racism can help close it. That work, the work that falls on each one of us every day, is a matter of public health.
We tend to put ourselves in the shoes of someone who belongs to the same racial group that we're in. One of the challenges we face is, how do we tell the stories of disadvantaged populations, the discrimination, the stress, the lower income and poverty, the living in poor neighborhoods? How can we tell those stories in ways that connect with the average American so that they feel empathy and then motivated to support policy interventions to address it?
Oh no, I messed it up.
Oh no! Carrie, did that hit you?
No.
Thank God.
So, if you're Hispanic, you can...
Why is that one so
Where am I? Okay, well, this is embarrassing.